All right, joining me now, Paul Garcia of Project Spurs and the host of the Spurs Cast. Paul, thank you so much for joining me today and for joining me to cover the Spurs this year. Really excited, man.
I'm excited too, man. It's good. I usually host on my own podcast, the Spurs Cast. So it's actually nice to be a guest on someone else's podcast because not having to prep the questions and stuff. I'd rather just answer the questions. Is a lot more fun that way. So I'm
It's
looking forward
it's
to this.
I have found it's a lot more fun for, especially when I'm dealing with 30 correspondents, to be able to chat
hmm
with everybody about their own teams and in their own expertise. So hopefully that is an enjoyable experience for everybody. It's going to be an enjoyable experience for everybody is watching Victor Wembanyama this year. I am very excited. We got to see a nice debut from him in the in his preseason opener, going up against Chet Holmgren, and I'm just floored by how incredible he looks already. Is he the most interesting thing going on with the team right now? I got to imagine so, right?
Yes, he is. I mean, just by far. I mean, I kind of felt bad because all through training camp and media day was all about Wemby questions, and like at some point we're going to cover the rest of the players, and then I found myself as I'm doing a podcast and also writing an article after that first preseason game. I just found myself just overwhelmed with Wemby content. I just really wanted to analyze all of his plays on offense and all of his sets on defense. And so at this point right now, yes, he's just the most interesting player for that team right now. And I feel kind of bad in a way because I know I'm not giving the attention at all to the other players, even though it's pretty much the same group from last year. There's just a handful of new players. But yeah, man, it's just like a totally new experience. Like the players have said in past interviews, he wows you with one play every game, and you're going to see that. We already saw that in that first preseason game against OKC when he goes with that spin move to the right, then he kind of spins over and does the up and under with the left. So just incredible play from him already, and it's just something so new for the NBA community.
I mean, it's got to be a zoo down there if we're being honest. Like this is something we've never really seen before, and Wemby as a prospect is somebody we've never seen before. Just the entire experience with him. I know this is like once you luck into that, everything kind of changes, everything kind of shifts, and that's what the experience is going to be like for this upcoming season is how to surround him with the right kind of supporting cast and bolstering him and making sure he gets the help that he needs. But it sounds like he's going to start at the four. Sounds like he'll play a little bit of five, just depending on the lineups, but maybe not full time. What do you think of the experience this year? And is it going to be hitting the ground running immediately, or is it going to be bumpy along the way?
I mean, based on what he did in that first preseason game, it looks like it's going to be kind of hitting the ground immediately. It is very interesting about where the Spurs are preferring to have him out on the floor. Like you said, he's playing more of the four. We saw him in that first game against OKC, and this also goes back to summer league. Is he's guarding more wing players he guarded like Lou Dort here in this game. He guarded Jalen Williams out of Santa Clara. And so he's not getting matched up with those traditional fives. There was a few possessions there where he got matched up with OKC's five, which was Chet Holmgren, but the Spurs weren't ideally seeking that matchup out. And Coach Pop even talked about it's going to take some time. That right now the Spurs kind of want to be hands off right now. They really want to see the coaching staff where he's most comfortable on the five. Is he better inside, outside? They want to get maybe some data, some percentages. Also, Pop talked about how it's more so about matchup dependent. If there's a very physical center down there in the middle, then they don't want Wemby near the paint. But if it's a player where maybe Victor has an advantage with his length and his size, then maybe they do want to patrol in the paint. And so I think it's very interesting. I think they're going to experiment a lot with him in different positions this year. And so I think we could see him at different points of the game, like you said, very matchup dependent, him playing inside, outside. And there are going to be some bumps and bruises. It's not always going to be perfect. Like I know he had a really good shooting night here. We did see though, like in summer league, he will have some of those games where he does struggle making his outside shots. So it's going to be a work in progress. But I think just from what you see, just the spacing on the floor, just the opportunity of him to be playing now alongside better players and the Spurs group and against better players on the other teams, I think we're going to get to see him flourish a little bit here early on in the start.
It should be fun. And so I cover the Nuggets here locally, and I can automatically see the version of the Spurs that has Victor Wembanyama roaming off of Aaron Gordon, trying to help onto Nikola Jokic as a help side rim protector, and then Zach Collins being the one to kind of take the brunt of that. But however they handle it, like it's going to be so fascinating. He's just such a unique experience, and the way that he's going to impact the game on both ends of the floor, it's going to be fascinating. But we should talk about other guys. Let's talk about Devin Vassell just got a new contract. Keldon
Mm-hmm.
Johnson is entrenched in that starting three, I think. And then Jeremy Sochan is, I have him currently penciled in as the sixth man because, I mean, how could you not after what he did last year? What are the next steps for those guys, especially kind of reorienting their game around a guy like Wembanyama?
Yeah, so Devin, we saw, he had a really good season last year aside from the injuries. That was really what plagued him here. And of course, the Spurs weren't forcing him to come back to games because, they wanted to be a bad team last year to end up with that chance of getting Wemby. But Devin, you really saw progression from him last year in terms of running pick and roll, being a lead ball handler in certain kind of scenarios. So I think that's what you want to really see him continue to develop is more so in the half court. How's he executing his offense? We know he can be a lights out shooter. He showed that he struggled a little bit in that OKC game, but they did have a scrimmage on Saturday, and he showed that his outside shot, and that's something that they're kind of banking on. So I think more so for him, it's more so like on the defensive end. Can he start being a lockdown defender, or is he more so like a help defender? And then offensively is more so what can he do to create in the half court? Keldon's going to be interesting because now, he was leading scorer last year almost because he was put into that role because Devin was hurt. They didn't really have a go-to player anymore with DeJounte Murray traded that summer before. And so now Keldon almost has to take a little bit of a reduced step back because we saw in that first game, Wemby had the highest usage rate. And we think that they're going to run a lot of sets through Wemby here on offense. He's going to be their focal point. So Keldon has to kind of figure out how's he going to be as more so like a secondary playmaker. And we also saw that his shot, he kind of struggled last year with that 3-point shooting where he was kind of on fire from the start of the season to December. Then it kind of just tailed off and he never got quite to that consistent rate. So that's something to watch if he does start is can he continue to shoot those outside shots very well. And then Sochan, like you said, I think that he'll end up starting off on the bench just because they already have a full starting group out there. And for him, it's more so just continue to create. I think they're going to want a lot of possessions with him and Wemby out there, and that's where you might see Wemby more so at the 5 is what Sochan's there at the 4. And just defensively, they're going to be a force defensively, being able to switch at different positions, being able to create havoc and help each other against those different matchups. But then on offense for him, he's going to playmaking wise, he's going to be okay. I think it's more so his shot also. Like he didn't come in as a shooter. We saw him go to that one-handed free throw form last year, which that improved his free throw accuracy. He says he's going to continue that this season, but again, it's more so like in the half court, what's he going to be able to do on the offensive end? Are opponents just going to stagger off of him, or they're going to actually commit to guarding him out there?
I can imagine this team matching up with teams like the Celtics and the Warriors and teams like that, and just being an absolute nightmare with Sochan just switching everything, Wemby even switching everything on 1 through 5, and just being a pterodactyl out there who can really block up as many of those possessions that most of those teams can get as possible when other teams go small. Should be very fascinating to track throughout the year just how their defense reacts and what even their offense is going to look like in that kind of system. Other guards, Tre Jones has been the guy as the starting point guard for a little bit here, but other guys like Malachi Branham, Blake Wesley, those guys, I think Spurs fans have some confidence in those guys developing a little bit and want to see what they look like with additional reps. Where can you tell us about those guys? And is this team just looking for at least one of those guys to kind of step up as that lead guard of the future?
Yeah, so Tre Jones is more so like they re-signed him in the summer. He got a new deal. He's more so just your typical quarterback. He's going to set up the offense. He's not going to be too aggressive offensively in terms of trying to find his own shot. And that's kind of what they need because they have playmakers out there like Keldon, Vassell, Wemby in that starting group. So we do see that Tre's probably going to start there at the point. That's kind of what he's going to do for you. And then defensively, he's a good guard who kind of really tries his best out there and doesn't lose his focus. Branham's made leaps and bounds. We saw him make some incredible leaps in the minutes that he got last year, starting in February when he started to get consistent minutes with all the injuries to the other players. And then even in this first preseason game and his first scrimmage, he just looks like he's continued to flourish. I know that he went over the summer to I don't know, I think it was Spain. They had like a little the NBA Players Association had a little camp out there, and Branham was one of the players who was invited to participate. So he got to play with other NBA players, and we see that he's continued to show progression, and especially in the half court. I mean, he's just really fluid in the half court of running that his mid-range jumper, things like that. He very much has a comp to like Chris Middleton of the Bucks, and that's kind of what you see in his game a lot. And he's very polished for a second-year player, Branham. The question mark player is Blake Wesley, where he he didn't really show a lot of strengths last year. I know that he was dealing with injuries throughout the season. Then in summer league, he quite didn't have as good of a summer league as you would have thought. Even the assistant coach who coached the team, Matt Nielsen, he kind of said he had an up and down summer league, and you usually don't hear a coach say that out loud about a player. Yeah. And so he actually had those comments in summer league. Blake was very kind of up and down in summer league. In this first preseason game against OKC, he did have a pretty good game here. But again, I think that it's more so that consistency. And so I feel like Wesley's the player that if it's not happening for him early on, Pop will give him his chances. But after that, I mean, Pop will go to the bench and he'll go to like Devontae Graham, a veteran player who's ready to step up and shoot if they need him. Or if not, they may even look at a younger player like Serge Ibaka-Rice, who they just added on a 2-way contract. So again, Wesley's more so that player who has some question marks, and he's really got to show some promise this year now in his second year.
So there's a few veterans that are going to be mixed in with these young guys, but it really is still a developmental team. Like Zach Collins will help, Devontae Graham will help, Doug McDermott's, Chetty Osman, Kem Birch, those guys will help, and they'll probably all play various roles throughout the year. But I still see this team as a young developing team, and with that is going to naturally come some losses. But it's not necessarily about the wins and losses with this team. It's more about, hey, how can you get these guys up to speed over the course of the next couple of years? I think Spurs fans understand that and appreciate that, especially when you've got a guy like Wembanyama, who, his prime is going to be 7 years from now. So you can take your time with something like this. So for their season, I've predicted the same number of wins, 22 wins, and that might seem pretty low to Spurs fans, especially when you get a guy like Wemby, and it probably is. It probably is, but I don't think he's going to play the entire season. I think he's probably going to be maybe 60 games. That seems like a fair estimate in the first season, but it will be some growing pains with him, but it'll also be some fun flourishes and stuff that Spurs fans could be really excited for going forward. Where do you see them finishing season win prediction wise?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I know that Vegas had him like at 28, 29 and a half over under. And then Kevin Pelton of ESPN recently put out his model where he had him at 26 wins. I kind of see them somewhere in that middle, like 27, 28 wins. Again, I don't know quite that they're going to make those leaps and bounds. And that was something that kind of threw people off was Pop's comments at Media Day, where he said, we still want to continue to learn and develop as a young team, but also we want to win this year. So I think that when they're saying wins, it's not going to be like, expecting playoffs or play in. We're talking about just a few more wins than maybe those 22 than last year. So I do expect them to do it a little bit better. Maybe, like I said, 26 to 28 wins, somewhere around there. But like we saw with their moves in the offseason, they didn't make a lot of moves to aggressively try to put a winning club around this team in year one of Wemby. What we saw was them kind of trade for players on veteran contracts who are not even on the team anymore, like Campaign, Reggie Bullock, more so to get those future second round picks, those kind of deals. And they could have, maybe gotten involved in the Dame sweepstakes or, some of those other players that were out there, but they showed they were going to be very patient. So yeah, the expectations aren't very high in terms of wins for this team. And also something that just mentions how you mentioned about Wemby maybe not playing the full season is we saw how the NBA's kind of scheduled their calendar where they put a lot of their primetime games early on in those first 2 to 3 months. And then after that, it kind of gets kind of quiet for San Antonio. So yeah, I'd say somewhere like that 27, 28 kind of win range.
I think that's completely fair, and that's just kind of what happens. I've done this now a few times here, and seeing I'm always a couple wins lower than my counterparts across from me, but that's perfectly fine, and I totally understand it. So, last thing for you. What does success look like for this team? Because as we mentioned, it's going to be multiple years down the road. If it's going to be 27 to 28 wins, what are Spurs fans looking for first and foremost?
I think you need to look at just some minor improvements in different areas of the way they finished last year. So for sure, like they've talked about the players and coaches defensively, they were 30th dead last in the league. Can they get in that like 20 to 25th range, kind of somewhere in there, just showing some sort of improvement there? Offensively, same thing. Can they make a little bit of leaps and bounds? And then just like I said, if they, as long as they can beat those 22 wins, I think they could just have a few more wins better than last year. That's showing some growth from this team. Maybe in the individual players, you do see some of those players continue to flourish. Maybe they don't make all-star teams or anything like that, but they continue to show some development. So I think that's more so some realistic expectations rather than looking at playing game right away in year one. I don't think that's quite the goal right now for this team.
I think that Wemby's going to make a serious push for the All-Star game. I don't know what you're talking about over there. I think he's
he's got a chance. Yeah, I was talking like the younger players like Vassell and all those kind of guys.
Yeah. No, totally fair. Wemby is going to be so fascinating to watch, man. I can't wait to catch it all with you, Paul. Thank you so much for hopping on with me. He's Paul Garcia, covering the Spurs for the Spurs or Project Spurs, and the host of the Spurs Cast. Thank you so much, and I am looking forward to chatting more this year.
Awesome, man. We'll do another check-in soon.